Light, Wellesley Testosterone, FindMassMoney.com, Gem Plumbing, and by Golf. On Boston's home for sports, 98.5.
Had a lot of fun. I never thought we would be talking about Rafael Devers being on the Giants, but here we are. That nightmare has come true, and now we get to live it.
All right, you and I have not spoken in the last week. We will get to the passing thing. We'll get to everything going on today, news from Christian Campbell, and we'll be heavy calls tonight. Obviously, it's a huge night for the Red Sox. Devers speaking a few minutes ago. We'll get to some of those comments as well. So line them up. We'll get to you at 617-779-0985. Just because you and I have not spoken, real quick, Tyler, your 30-second synopsis on the last week. How you feeling?
An absolute disaster for the Red Sox. One of the more embarrassing things I've seen play out, and something I think if you were paying attention throughout the offseason, a lot of people showed up to this story on the last chapter. But if you followed the way the Red Sox miscommunicated this entire situation, going back to Devers' agent, speaking out multiple times over the offseason, Cotillo and Sean McAdams' reports being confirmed about the Red Sox misleading Devers all the way up until spring training when he had been there for a month before Bregman had signed. I just think they completely mismanaged this situation with their franchise player in a year where they're claiming they're trying to win, where the dial has been turned to the present. You got rid of your hitter and a guy who had a top 5 OPS in the sport since April 1st. That's a disaster, and I don't think it's solely for relationship reasons between Breslow and John Henry. I think that was only a factor in it. I think a factor in it was the logjam with the roster with Wilyer Abreu returning today, and I also think beyond that, just looking at the contract and hearing the term underwater numerous times, it's continued reliance on a model here that lacks feel for the current situation, what it means to have a hitter like Rafael Devers in your lineup with the young players you have. And even the package itself, multiple outlets telling you it was light. People felt like they could have done better depending on whether they were willing to eat money or maybe shop it a little bit more. I'm pretty disappointed all around.
I'm not sure, but this is definitely not a yes or no sports talk radio topic. I don't know if, I'll be honest, Milliken, over the course of 12 years doing this, I'm not really sure if I've come across a story quite like this where there are so many layers to it that you truly can't boil it down to yes or no. But I will ask you, yes or no, did the Red Sox make the right decision?
No.
Do you support it?
No.
Jimmy Stewart, do you support it, yes or no?
I support the move. I just wanted a better return.
No, I'm sorry. Yes or no, Jimmy? Do you support the move, yes or no?
Yes, I support the trade of Rafael Devers.
I do too. I support this. I support the organization. Yes, Rafael Devers was a pill. They did everything else around it wrong, all right?
They made him into this version of himself, and if you're a good organization...
he made himself into this.
Stop it.
Oh, come
stop
on, Milliken.
it. I will not buy
he's
that.
a putz.
He
Come on.
definitely, post-Casas injury, there's plenty to complain about with the way he handled it, even going down to some of the quotes we're seeing out of San Francisco. But when the player asked multiple times throughout the offseason, can you just be upfront with me? Can you be honest with me? And you chose to lie to him over and over again. And Jeff Passan's piece today, I can tell you Alex Cora had to be speaking to him and letting him know, I texted Devers during the offseason and he didn't respond. Credit to Passan in his piece saying it. This is a common thing for Devers. He goes off the grid when he goes back to the DR. He was in spring training for a month before the Bregman situation happened. If you had approached him and been honest, that whole situation looks different. No one made Craig Breslow at the end of season press conference last season say, we will speak to Rafael Devers before anything happens. Nothing will become external unless we have a conversation with Rafael Devers. No one made him on November 4th, the night that the QO went out to Nick Pivetta, go on record saying we were impressed with Rafael Devers' defense last year. He actually played through injury, and he might have been even better if he wasn't dealing with all that stuff going on. No one made you lie to your franchise player and create dysfunction with a guy who the only complaint you ever had in a previous year before was that maybe he didn't talk to the media. Hell, everyone wants
couldn't stay in shape. Come on, Milliken.
And he still hit last year, was on pace for his best offensive year before his knee gave out. And it was on a diving play in Colorado.
Why did his knee give out? Why did he have shoulder problems last year? Because he can't stay in shape.
And he's still hit and been a top 3 third baseman in the sport every single year. There's very childlike features there. You can argue them. But guess what? You know who also is a child, Matt McCarthy?
Who?
Ronald Acuna Jr. with the Atlanta Braves, who multiple times in the past year has tweeted out things criticizing their manager or the organization. Guess what good organizations can do? They work through it for a generational and elite talent. The Red Sox aren't able to do that. I watched Manny Ramirez for years come here and do the same things and create problems, much beyond anything Rafael Devers done. Hell, Manny Ramirez pushed a press press secretary down the stairs.
Like, hey, listen, McCormick, according to Billy Lanny, should have gotten him his tickets.
Hey, listen, Billy, let him speak it. But that's what I'm telling you here. A good organization is able to work things out with the talent of that level, someone who can hit to that degree. For a lineup that tonight has Abraham Toro hitting cleanup and a rookie in Carlos Narvaez hitting second, the fact that you were willing to throw Rafael Devers off the boat for a lesser package that you couldn't even do better for, that's poor mismanagement for a guy in the front office and Craig Breslow who has shown he has issues with communication on multiple levels, whether you're talking the front office itself, the players, the guy in the dugout. Hell, we knew Craig Breslow had these communication issues because he worked remote with the Chicago Cubs. He wasn't even in the front office on a daily basis. These issues were there from the very start, and this is a dysfunction in this organization that has lasted now through multiple regimes.
Without a doubt, the dysfunction is killing them. It's killing them. They have massive problems from the top on down, and Devers was in some ways the perfect person to reveal all these problems because he himself was a massive child and a petulant baby. But that's where we get into this Jeff Passan story, which I'm about 3/4 of the way through, Milliken, and there's so much good stuff in here. What's your primary takeaway from the Passan thing? Because I think in reading this, Craig Breslow takes an absolute beating for 13 pages right here. This story is so good. I asked Jimmy for a highlighter.
Whoa, full Felger.
I mean, this is like my version of the Wells report here. Like, I've got the highlighter. I'm ready to go. That's my takeaway. Am I missing something here?
No, I do think that's the biggest thing here, and especially the way it's worded where, in my opinion, it reminds me a lot of the end of the Dave Dombrowski tenure, where we hear about this small circle that Craig Breslow's working in. If you remember with Dombrowski, it was about a week, I believe, before he was fired. Dan Shaughnessy had put out a piece talking about Dave Dombrowski. Yep. All the people that had been here, the brain trust dating back to the Theo Epstein days, Dave Dombrowski was good. It was Tony La Russa and Frank Wren, the only guys he was talking to. Now we hear Craig Breslow has kind of isolated a lot of these people. He has his little team, and that's it. I think the only person we can clearly identify is Mike Grootman, who moved from basically a director of analytics role into more move-making. Chaim Bloom had hired him during his tenure here from the Brewers. Outside of that, feels like it's been a long time since I heard anything about Eddie Romero or Raquel Ferreira, a lot of these people that were in the organization for a long time.
The holdovers.
Yeah, they don't seem to be as active voices or maybe as loud voices, and I wonder if some of the things we're hearing are coming from those guys.
So I think that's a great point. I think, the way I read this story, Milliken, is this is very much, and for folks who aren't as familiar with the names, who might not, know who, Eddie Romero is or Raquel
Assistant
Ferreira.
GMs, both of them.
Assistant GMs, folks who have been here a long time, probably more on the Cora side of things.
Definitely.
What we're encountering is the old school baseball folks, or the folks who have been around a long time, the Alex Cora versus the Craig Breslow, the analytics versus the more old school stuff. And I'll read here from Passan. Early in Breslow's tenure as chief baseball officer, he hired a consulting firm called Sportsology Group to assess Boston's baseball operations department. The wide-ranging evaluation was something out of Office Space, an attempt to cut the fat accumulated while Boston cycled through heads of baseball ops. So they brought in a whole bunch. They brought in the Bobs, who went into everybody and said, what exactly would you say you do here? Any objective assessment, this is Passan writing, would note that perhaps problems originated with organizational instability, that the Red Sox had grown bloated, at least in part because they so often made changes. Regardless of how it came to be, the recommendations included the elimination of jobs across multiple departments. Around 50 people were fired last year, sources said. The professional scouting department was gutted. Some of the positions wound up being filled, but it was clear to those who stayed and went, this was Breslow's team, and now he would remake it in his own image. Since the cuts, Breslow's circle of trust has grown small, and his reliance on the team's analytical model heavy, according to the sources, leaving some longtime employees embittered. Breslow loyalists fear the consequences of that, with one saying, quote, "There are definitely turncoats internally plotting against Brez," unquote. Who are those turncoats?
I think it could be Alex Cora and his group of guys because they've done this before. This isn't the first time they've turned on someone and had to get them out of this organization because either they felt threatened or they felt like their power, the pull for power was going away from them. And I think we're seeing Craig Breslow has been pretty empowered if he made a trade at this level. Obviously, you need ownership support in that as well.
Milliken, real quick, it was an ownership level trade.
You can't pass a trade without that.
Ownership undercut Breslow here by essentially demanding that the number one goal for ownership was clearing the contract. And we heard about that from Greg Johnson, and we'll get more into that in a second.
Yeah, no, they weren't willing to complete a deal unless someone was taken fully on the Devers contract. But when I do go back to Breslow, I go back to a very important quote from his very first press conference here. And when he talked about what he wanted at the DH role for the Red Sox moving forward, it was a rotational DH, someone who was not going to be clogging that spot up in the everyday lineup. I think that was a big part of, why over the offseason there were a lot of people in that organization that wanted Casas traded and they wanted Devers at first base. In a perfect world, then that all works out. But I think there's just so much to look at and question there with, a guy in Craig Breslow, because I think at the end of the day, he wanted Devers gone if there was a pathway to it, because it wasn't a contract he handed out. His model tells him this is not a good contract, which I do disagree with when you look at Vlad Guerrero making $500 million, who last 3 out of the last 4 seasons, Devers has a higher OPS plus than Vlad Guerrero. Juan Soto, who's making $800 million. I'll take the Devers contract. I think there's some really good value at that point in time. I think Breslow was more than fine moving off the player as well.
Yes, I agree. I mean, especially after Devers made it personal.
Yeah, and embarrassed him and pantsed him in front of everybody.
Yeah. These guys can be vengeful. Even the nerds can be vengeful. We know that because here the nerd is purging the organization. Bloom did some of the same stuff. I mean, more with players. He got guys out of here. That is human nature. When you come in and when you take over an organization, you want it to be your guys and your operation. The problem with this, Milliken, is they've hired somebody who's a better baseball general manager than Chaim Bloom. He is.
On a move basis, I agree.
On a move basis, no doubt about it. But you've hired somebody who doesn't have the interpersonal skills to do the job. So if you are going to empower somebody, you are so much better off empowering somebody like a Dave Dombrowski, who was very successful, and he isolated himself, and Dave Dombrowski wielded immense power in the organization. That is kind of where they're going with Craig Breslow. But there are so many people in the organization pushing back on it because Breslow doesn't have the skills behind the scene to navigate the politics needed, especially when you're firing 50 people. He doesn't have the ability to do it, which is why you have longtime scouts on a Zoom call calling him an effing stiff. Nobody would have said that about Dave Dombrowski. They might not have liked him, all of those things. But Dombrowski commands more respect than Breslow.
And Matt, to your point, Dombrowski only answered to John Henry.
Yes.
He didn't have to worry about the business snake that is Sam Kennedy. Sam Kennedy is the one who bridges the gap between Breslow and John Henry. And that's where the problem lies, is that you have Sam Kennedy, who is more of a business guy, and he's a mediocre business guy at that. And that's where it's like, I'm happy to cut 50 people from the on-baseball staff for computers because that saves money, and that's what Sam Kennedy is mediocre at, is saving money. He's not a baseball guy. He's just been around baseball people. That doesn't make you a baseball guy.
Wall Street efficiency, Jimmy. We've heard that in the last week.
I will also say, when you talk about the damage he's done to scouts and how they view him baseball,
Sam Kennedy's done damage, right? This is what you're saying. Sam Kennedy's done damage.
I'll blame Sam Kennedy
Jimmy.
for everything.
Sam's my friend. We had a nice conversation earlier this week.
The smirk on his face was tremendous.
I'm not going to tolerate this. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The weasel got to you, too.
But I will say, on the scout front, and Craig Breslow creating enemies and not even having the whereabouts to understand why a comment like that came from, you fired so many of the people that worked with this man. Baseball America did their survey in January. The Red Sox were voted as one of 5 of the most unfriendly scout teams in all of baseball. This was for a team that was once extremely scout-friendly and kind of at the front of that entire industry and everything. But Craig Breslow now, there's no need for the scout, because when you have a model that will tell you this trait and this trait and this trait, green light, that's a good baseball player. you're going to run into the things you run into where you lack fundamentals on a regular basis. You have guys who don't know the true things that go into playing the game of baseball. And this is where I really think you're getting to a point where analytics go too far. A lot of people want to say Chaim Bloom was too far. I thought Chaim Bloom was actually much closer to the middle than what Craig Breslow has been so far.
Jimmy, they've lost Milliken. Here he is ripping the analytics.
Spare me.
And the analysts. That's how bad things have gotten. That's how dysfunctional the Red Sox have gotten.
They need a cleaning of house. They need to clean Sam out, Breslow out, Cora out, and the entire staff. They just need a complete house cleaning here.
That's the takeaway, Jimmy. I think they're so broken that I think everybody needs to go.
And I
agree. Reset.
Cora has somehow dodged so many bullets when we talk about communication for a guy he managed 7 years leading into this situation.
It's his job.
Somehow Alex Cora is sitting here and we're not wondering how he couldn't get that guy to buy into this team and see the vision.
It's the Doc Rivers syndrome. It's Doc was nice to the media, Cora's decent to the media, and that's where it is. Like, you can't criticize your media source.
617-779-0985. The cockroach Alex Cora just keeps surviving the mess that is the Boston Red Sox. And the owner of the San Francisco Giants told you what a mess they were. We'll get into his comments. Devers speaking a few minutes ago as he makes his debut for the debut against the Red Sox, or they play the Red Sox tonight, plays his former team for the first time. It's Milliken, McCarthy, Stu's here Friday night on the baseball.
Hour on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Buster and Craig had a lot of conversations. It stalled at a few points. I called, their ownership group and just said, we're serious about this, and I think you guys are, maybe pushing a little too hard in players, that they want as part of the deal. And so there were times when it looked like it was dead, and then it came back online and just kept the dialogue alive. And I think just putting the pressure, where we weren't going to be around at the deadline. We wanted to make it clear to them that if this deal gets done, it gets done in the next few weeks, and then we're not going to drag it out. We'll move on to something else. So I think that was very important.
That is Greg Johnson, the owner of the San Francisco Giants, who worked over John Henry in this trade. Milliken, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I found these details fascinating from Johnson, really openly walking us through how the deal went down, and even saying that he called John Henry to say your baseball department is asking for too much, which, by the way, was not true. But he recognized Henry's motivations in all of this. What do you think Henry's number one motivation in trading Rafael Devers was?
Get the money off the books. It was $250 million, and it was for a player we know now that people in the front office were clearly disagreeing with Chaim Bloom when they felt to pay him. And Jeff Passan's story highlights this. Ownership was the main driving force of paying Rafael Devers a couple years ago because of the way fans reacted, because of how upset they were following the departure of Mookie Betts and Xander Bogaerts. So yeah, I think John Henry, I think part of it was the meeting and him flying all the way across and Devers telling him, I don't care that you're here. We can have breakfast together and it still don't matter. I think that was part of it, but I think John Henry was more than fine moving off an asset where Craig Breslow has an analytical model that fits right into John Henry's outlook on things.
Yeah, and the Giants pounced on that weakness. They understood that John Henry's motivations were because things had gotten personal, and based on the way that the Red Sox have handled trades in recent years, Mookie Betts, 2 cents on the dollar, Chris Sale, 1 cent on the dollar, but they wanted to get out of those contracts. That's been David Price included in the Mookie Betts trade. It's almost like they used Mookie Betts as a pawn to get out of David Price's contract. They know how the Red Sox do business. They know what Henry's motivations are, and they took advantage. And as a result, Henry undercut his general manager. This is where I don't think Breslow deserves much defense in any of this, but I will defend him on the return. He was never going to get the return because the owner just wanted to accept the money, and that was it.
Yeah, there's been some rumblings going around. I know it's been talked about on a few different platforms now that there was maybe an offer out there from the Braves that didn't include as much money being eaten, where you could have gotten a better package. Hell, we know Bryce Eldridge, who first baseman over with the San Francisco Giants. The Red Sox were targeting him. They wanted him, the number one prospect in their system, top 30 prospect in the sport. They had to come off of that offer when they wouldn't eat more of that contract, which goes back to the John Henry thing once again. And it's why the Giants owner can sit there and laugh at you and say, this was a hanging slider for us. We really just sat here. This was a meatball, because we know when you have a generational hitter like Rafael Devers and you're willing to just trade, this little package of prospects here, we'll do it, because that contract, especially 4 years, 5 years from now, even in this moment, $300 million isn't what $300 million means to most baseball fans anymore.
And even if it's a bad contract, they got a player that they never would have gotten before. They totally took advantage of the situation.
And that's one of the things that upsets me most about the handling of this situation, because the Giants missing out on things, they had been running their organization in a very similar way to the Red Sox.
Yes,
they had Farhan Zaidi running over there.
Who was Chaim Bloom 2.0.
Couldn't have been more similar.
Yep.
Legit clones of each other. The issues they had in their organization were the same ones we were having here in Boston. But they missed out on Aaron Judge, Bryce Harper, Shohei Ohtani, Carlos Correa. They finally got the deal done. Failed the physical and weren't able to get the star player. The Giants have been foaming at the mouth for a franchise player, and you had the only one that's going to move at this deadline in your hands, and the fact that you couldn't, hold them to the fire and force them. The Giants shouldn't have had much leverage here. They don't have another alternative to a Rafael Devers like bat who could play first base until Eldridge is ready, or DH, and yet somehow the package still feels light.
So the Giants and the Red Sox, I think, are, if you really want to dive deep into the nerdy baseball stuff, these are two franchises that, to your point, Milliken, have been the exact same for the last 5 years. They had one really good year in 2021, and other than that, they have been completely and totally middling. Same problems.
Pitching project after pitching project.
Oh, my God. And it was the exact same. They were mirror images of each other. Not to mention, too, they're two huge market franchises. historic franchises. They couldn't have been more similar. And this offseason, the Giants pivoted away from it, and they hired more of a traditionalist, as closer than you can get to a traditionalist than you normally get in baseball nowadays, in Buster Posey, and they've gotten serious about it, and they have fixed that franchise. They're headed in the right direction. They now have the best player they've had since Barry Bonds, because Devers is the best hitter they've had since Bonds. It's been close to 20 years since they've had, a true star middle-of-the-order bat. Posey was a Jeter type, a leader, but not this type of guy. They've been chasing forever and forever and forever, and they finally got him because they were just a smarter baseball operation than you. They're just so fascinating to compare to, and the Giants and the Red Sox now are finally going in different directions, and I'd feel a hell of a lot better being a Giants fan today than I would be a Red Sox fan.
The most alarming thing to me was, I think this was in Buster Olney's piece. There's been a little bit of a nice write-up as well on the San Francisco side. Alex Povalik, I believe, is the name of the writer.
Does a really good job covering the Giants.
Awesome job. And just kind of detailed how the Giants knew, we need to get this deal done now. Because if it waits out or if somehow the Red Sox hold on to this deal or whatever it may be, it's only going to get more expensive. It's only going to get more competitive. And I think that was maybe with them not being 100% sure at that time if it was solely money, if that was going to be the biggest thing to getting this deal done. Because, like I mentioned, we hear now that the Cubs and the Mariners were also in on these talks. Obviously,
yeah,
we
but
mentioned
how
the
seriously?
Braves. Well, that's where the money would come in. How
Right.
much money would you eat for those two organizations? Who the Mariners are cheaper than anyone, and the Cubs have acted pretty cheap in recent years. You were going to have to eat a portion of that contract, but it wasn't about the prospect return to them. They wanted the financial flexibility again, which puts the pressure on when are you going to spend it. And right now,
It's not going to happen.
doing that when you're trying to win and you were on a 5-game winning streak and finally finding your momentum with Alex Bregman maybe a week or two away, that's where I sit there and have a hard time believing that this dugout was such a mess that they couldn't get by with Rafael Devers.
But I do think that's true, though. I do think the clubhouse was a mess, and I think Devers was hurting things. It's, again, the thing about this story is every angle at it is probably true. The Red Sox screwed up.
Everybody deserves
Devers
some blame
screwed up
here.
No doubt about it. There are issues in the clubhouse, but in the end, the issue is going to be on the field because they're not going to have the talent. I think that clubhouse looked at Devers and were like, what the F are you doing, buddy? Can you help the team? Trust me, it doesn't sound like too many guys are broken up.
But at the same time, Jarren Duran, nice comments you have. Guess what? You haven't been a league average bat this year. Guess what? You regressed in left field. So what the hell are you bitching about? How about you go do your job and go make some plays, Jarren Duran? Seriously, and I like Jarren Duran. I think there's some leadership qualities there. Alex Cora has empowered him a few times, despite him doing things that probably should tell you shouldn't do that, right? But who was the guy showing up and actually doing it on the field? Because last time I checked, Devers was by far your best hitter. He was the one out there being the guy in the middle of that lineup and hitting. So you can say what you want. Oh, he was a problem. You don't have a replacement or an answer for taking that guy out of the lineup. Instead, you're putting more pressure on Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, and Carlos Narvaez. Two guys who have barely, Narvaez maxed out at 100 games in a professional baseball season in the minors. He's going to hit a wall. Your ace on the mound, Garrett Crochet, is going to hit a wall this year. Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer are learning at the big league level right now. To put those guys in the position you did right now, all to lead to this because it was apparently that poisonous, that seems ass backwards to me when you take a lesser return as well.
All right, 617-779-0985. I got to get to the calls. I'm sorry. Millick and I haven't seen each other in 5 days.
I've missed you.
I've missed you too. I've been looking forward to talking about this with you. So it's been Millick and I just catching up. Apologies. John in Taunton. Hey, John.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys.
Hey.
I wanted to talk about Buster Posey in San Francisco coming in with real baseball sense, actually taking on an organization as a baseball organization and not an analytical game. And honestly, it's guys like him and Dombrowski that are the real GMs in this league that should be followed.
No doubt about it. When you read this Passan story, Milliken, how concerned are you about Craig Breslow being the GM moving forward?
Very. And I think I go back to this column. I believe this is a Jeff Passan article that was written in March, right around the time, Buster Posey was really moving into his role, and there was a lot of talk of it and what he wanted to do differently than what Craig Breslow is doing, per se. Posey's striving to change that. He wants to build the Giants into a consistent, sustained winner, just like Zaidi attempted to do over the past 6 years, but he also wants them to be fun. He wants to deviate from the analytical roster-building approach that has overtaken the industry, prioritizing hyper-efficiency and placing less emphasis on aptitude and experience. He wants to construct inedible Giants teams the community can rally around the way it used for most of the previous decade. And I go back to the player Buster Posey was, an absolute leader out there.
No doubt.
A guy who couldn't have been more clear while being, arguably, and I think the best catcher of his generation, no shade to Yadi Molina, the guy who was the face, a very Derek Jeter-like leader on those teams. And I think he's taken that approach here, and you see where the communication leaks out. You see it in that meeting when he's talking to the fans, when he breaks it down and he just tells you, Rafael Devers is a dude. Like, just dropping a line like that normal talk back and forth. And one of the
Craig Breslow's not going to say that?
No, he's not. He's going to drop 4 vocab words that I need a thesaurus to understand. And, I'm fine with using big words, but you also have to be able to converse and communicate with people on a one-on-one level. I think that was something Theo Epstein was incredible at. I think even Chaim Bloom had that skill. Now, it would get a little wonky, but I felt like he could connect and talk to a person. You may have called him corny, but it felt more like a person was talking to you. When Craig Breslow talks to you, sometimes you're like, Are you AI? Are you a robot? And I think you can complain and say, oh, whatever, nerds. When you're talking one-on-one to people and trying to build relationships, it's hard to overcome a wall like that.
Boy, they really have lost Milliken. It's unbelievable. Milliken.
There's a middle ground to it, and I always tried to emphasize that when I first started talking about baseball on here. As much as I love analytics, there's a balance in between. And I think here right now you're seeing, once again, someone that's way too far to that right side. And what we thought Breslow could be as a former player being in the middle, he is almost even nerdier than Chaim Bloom.
Anthony and
Yes, I am a robot. We're not in alignment.
Hey, McCarthy, man, you guys are doing great, and you're the hottest working man in 98.5, so you don't get to apologize for the calls.
Preach.
Keep going. But look,
I'm a hero, Anthony. I'm glad you recognize my contributions.
I definitely recognize you, man. You step it up. But hey,
McCarthy.
since Red Sox Nation's burning, I hate ownership. I don't know if I hate Cora. I've changed my mind every day on that. I don't really care about Devers. I would love, and I don't want to hurt the guy, but I would love to see Dobbins hit him right in his fat ass, because I want to root for the team. I want to see some fight in this team, because I don't want to. We still got 80 games left, right? I don't want to give up on the team. I would like them to come out with a little fire and do it. I don't think they will.
The human element of it, and I'm not here. I don't think that does any good. In some ways, I think it would almost. I think that would be worse if you hit Devers tonight. But what you're saying is you want the team to respond. And I think the team has responded. I think, based on their comments the other day in Seattle, they were very dismissive of it. Like, hey, yeah, whatever, it's baseball. You make a trade. I don't think that clubhouse misses him, Milliken.
I don't think Devers was ever a leader in that way. I don't think he was ever the person to rally guys around. And
no,
I never blamed him for that, because he was never that guy. And even when he signed that contract, he didn't pretend to be that guy right after it happened. I also look at that roster and that dugout. There's not a lot of guys with the cachet in there to actually say something about something like that. Like, that's just the truth to it. Most of those guys on that roster, who has the credibility like a Xander Bogaerts to speak like he did after the Christian Vasquez trade?
No,
it was Devers.
They don't have that. But that was never. Devers was never that guy. This does, though, open up. It gives Bregman more authority in that clubhouse, because it was going to be hard for Bregman to come in and truly be the leader of the team, given that he was a part of the whole drama to begin with. Not that it was his fault. They signed him. They said, you're playing third base. But when the best player on the team is getting, for lack of a better term, screwed over by the new leader walking in, that creates an uncomfortable dynamic. Once Bregman comes back, that helps the team from a clubhouse perspective.
It hurts the pitching staff, though, with as hardworking he's been, being the pitching coach that Andrew Bailey can't be because of the stupid pitching lab.
Jay Stu is very right about that. I will also add, Alex Bregman, it was no coincidence when the Red Sox, a couple days before Devers got traded, put Roman Anthony's locker between him.
No doubt.
Bregman on the left, I believe Duran on the right side.
1 out of 2 isn't bad.
That was a very telling sign there, but I'll also tell you right now, setting yourself up where Alex Bregman is really the only thing as a veteran, as an anchor to your lineup, you better be ready for what you're going to have to pay, whether it's at the All-Star break or the offseason, because they are about to bend you over backwards for that contract. Craig Breslow, last year you were so happy you got that multi-year deal. Tell me what 6 and 200 looks like, because that's what they're going to be looking for, and what leverage do you have to say no to it? Because this free agent class this offseason, it stinks. It sucks. You're not paying Kyle Tucker $400 million, and I love Kyle Tucker, but you have this outfield logjam that you're trying to work through.
Left-handed, too.
Yeah, and what after that? It's Bo Bichette. Like, do you want another Trevor Story situation, a guy who chases a ridiculous amount?
No, thank you.
No. So what are your real options here to get a batter at that level? You're going to have to empty a farm system where you've removed a lot of that big positional push coming through. You have talent there. There's the Franklin Ariases of the world. You have some pitching that's coming through in the eyes of a Peyton Tolley, Luis Perales coming back. But putting together a trade package for something like that right now is not the easiest thing in the world either.
I need to get your thoughts on where Christian Campbell fits into all of this, because there's a ton of news coming out of Worcester today on Campbell, what they plan on doing with him. He did deny the reporting that Devers that there were issues that he had volunteered.
Devers bullied him over first base. No offense, but the article that came from has had just about every piece of information in it completely, at least said to be false in the last 24 hours.
617-779-0985. Quick update, right back with you. Milligan's here, Stu's here, it's McCarthy, no Maz. It's a summer Friday night in the baseball hour. We'll get into all of that, plus Devers' comments coming out of San Francisco next.
Spear me, Milliken.
sharing what I would call a massively significant moment for this organization, because Christian was not drafted in the first round. He wasn't a top prospect upon entering the organization. What he was a good player who made himself a great player because of his work ethic and diligence and open-mindedness and attitude. And so in many ways, he is a prime example of what's possible when great scouting meets great development around a player who prioritizes maximizing his potential over everything else. And so there are so many people in this organization who should feel particularly proud about their contributions to Christian's development, from our major league staff all the way down to hitting coaches in A-ball and the entire player development and scouting groups.
All right, that's Craig Breslow back in April. It's just as cringy as it was back in April. And maybe even more so now because of what's happened with Christian Campbell.
I'm sad Maz isn't here to take a victory lap.
Oh, he was right. Yeah, Maz was right. Milliken, you were here
Yes.
opening night. I was here. What did I say? What was my opening take opening night?
If I recall correctly, you also agreed that he was not ready and they had rushed it. And listen, I was someone in the camp. I didn't think the bat was going to struggle to the level it did over the last month and a half, but I was a big proponent of Devers at third base and Bregman at second base, which I think is the hardest and most frustrating thing when you look at Campbell getting sent down, because all of this that just played out with Devers getting sent down, all this happening in the same week. This was all basically coming to fruition because you had to force Christian Campbell in the opening day lineup.
Which Jeff Passan wrote about today. When Devers showed up at spring training, the team broached the idea of shifting him to designated hitter. Their computer model said the best version of the 2025 Boston Red Sox would feature reigning minor league player of the year Christian Campbell at second base, Bregman at third, and Devers at DH. Devers was livid. It's the computer model.
Yep.
They didn't consider any human emotion whatsoever. Honestly, I said this back in February. I was on the day that Devers went off and did the I play third thing. I said what's eventually going to happen here is they're going to ease him away from third base. Bregman's going to come in, he's going to play second, and then a few days a week they're going to shift Bregman to third and Devers is going to DH, and then you're just going to kind of slowly wean him off the position. And then, Campbell will come up eventually and Meyer will come up eventually, and you'll figure that out, and that's the way you start. That, looking back on it, would have been the way to approach it. It was not the way they approached it because the computer model said the best version of the Red Sox featured Campbell at second, Bregman at third, and Devers at DH. They never, ever, ever considered the human emotion of it, from Devers to Campbell to anything. And in the process, they ran the risk of ruining Campbell. And I hope they didn't, but who knows if he bounces back from this.
And I think he will, and I go back.
I hope so, Milliken, because I believe in the player. Real quick, I believe in the player, but I believe in his talent. I just don't know if he can put it together.
Yeah, they need to help him learn how to hit pitches coming in on the hands because he was just getting abused. He hasn't pulled a baseball, it feels like, in 2 months. And the defense at second base, he's the worst defensive second baseman in baseball, -8 outs above average. That's why he's getting work at first base now, because the original plan when they were preparing Marcelo Meyer was to get Meyer up to second. We saw Campbell working out at first. Now the path will be learn first base, get your swing mechanics back on track, and hopefully you're the future first baseman of the Red Sox. Tristan Casas, I love you. I don't know what's going to happen to you. It's not good. Hey, they do have an open DH spot, maybe. But I'll add this. Devers, in that Jeff Passan piece, it's included. When Devers was coming to understanding of what was going to happen, he wanted to be phased out. He wanted to get some days at third, like you had just mentioned, as he transitioned to DH to make the whole thing happen. Who was the guy who told him to throw the glove away? It's noted in that story. It was Alex Cora. Alex Cora, when he was showing up to the backfield, said, "Stop bringing your glove." That's what they told him. So at the end of the day, Cora made that decision as well, that you aren't even going to come here and put the work in and do those infield reps. That all plays into this situation you were in, where when you told him to pick the glove back up, he goes, "You've already miscommunicated with me multiple times. You told me to stop bringing my glove around, and here you are begging me to bring my glove again." I wish Devers was a better teammate and said, "You know what? I will do it. I don't care about my personal issues or beef there." But guess what? I've seen a lot of great people and a lot of great workers in different fields get disgruntled and get angry after being mistreated by their bosses. We knew he was unhappy a year ago in 2024 spring training when everyone wanted to applaud him for calling out the front office and saying we needed more. Well, hey, here you are playing with the guy's feelings again, doing it on multiple levels, from a front office spot, from a managerial spot, and you wonder why you weren't able to work this relationship out. It's crap like that.
Eric and Reading. Hey, Eric.
What's going on, guys? My question for you guys is, why does everything leak inside of Fenway? Like, well-run franchises in any sport, mostly nothing leaks unless someone wants it to. And my second question is, who do you think we could get by the deadline? I'm kind of rooting for Arizona to keep losing. Josh Naylor seems like a interesting guy to look at.
Deadline talk probably a little bit later on. Why does stuff keep leaking? Because the Red Sox are a completely dysfunctional organization. Read this passing thing. It's unbelievable.
Crazy. Great piece.
How dysfunctional this franchise is. That's why it keeps happening. Matt in Boston. Hey, Matt.
Hey, guys. How's it going? Couple things. I think, on the Red Sox side, the financial flexibility thing is a complete crock. I mean, they had enough financial flexibility when they were carrying Devers' salary to offer Soto $700 million. So it seems to me that they don't really need that. On the other side, though, I got to say there's a lot of disingenuous nonsense being tossed around. Like, Devers is not a generational talent. He's closer to J.D. Martinez than he is a generational talent. And Chris Sale, great pitcher, but he was a bust here, except for his first year.
Yeah, and Matt, I asked Sam Kennedy this the other night. I said, why do you keep doing this? And he said every situation is different. Before he went off into the 24 years, 4 championships, kiss the ring nonsense.
Ignore the 500 record, since 2019.
Right, that got everybody all fired up. Every trade is different. Mookie Betts was because they did not want to pay him. Period. End of story. They did pay Rafael Devers. Then things got personal, and then they didn't want to pay him because relationships were destroyed, so they got rid of him. Sale was different. Lester was a little bit different. That was their philosophy at the time, saying don't pay pitchers, so we're going to lowball him, and we'll see if we can get him. We offended the player. Then you adjusted a few years later and got David Price. Then you used Mookie Betts as a pawn to get rid of David Price. Every situation is different, but the result keeps being the same, Milliken, which is them giving up Hall of Fame talent or something close to it for nothing. Nothing. The results are always the same, even if every situation was different that led to it. Eventually, if you keep talking about how bad your roommates are, you're the bad roommate. Rafael Devers was a bad roommate. The Red Sox have been bad roommates for 10 years.
And that's the problem. There's a pattern here, and that's why I'm telling you, please go to the root of the issue. I understand people want to jump on Devers. You got David Ortiz on payroll, posting embarrassing Instagram stories like he didn't sit there and cry to the media consistently throughout his career. Like, this wasn't a guy who can't even recognize the difference between him and Rafael Devers. At age 28, David Ortiz had made $5 million. He was just getting his career off the ground. Rafael Devers has $250 million in guaranteed dollars. Guess what? He doesn't have to eat his words and kiss ass to get a contract every year like you had to. And that's your position. That was unfortunate. That's what the Red Sox did to you. But you allowed yourself to be a victim of what they did to you. Guess what Rafael Devers did? He just went to a better team with more wins than you and said, hey, they're going to pay my contract in full, and they still believe in me so much, you're going to get a decent prospect package back. That's the difference in those positions, and go to the root, man. And it's even more frustrating than Mookie because you saw when he was traded that there was a window closing with the farm system that was emptied. This is a team that's on the rise that is supposed to be peaking very soon, and yet you traded the best bat in your lineup, and you're expecting rookies to mature in year one when it took guys like Xander Bogaerts years to become the hitter they were, and now you're expecting them to carry this franchise.
Would you like the last word tonight? Not Milliken, not McCarthy, not Stu. How about the last word from Rafael Devers? Speaking to the media a few minutes ago. Devers on what he wished he had done differently in Boston.
What was the last time you were this happy professionally?
¿Cuándo fue la última vez que estuviste contento profesionalmente?
¿Cómo le explico? Tenía mucho que no tenía este sentimiento que tengo ahora. Tengo poco día aquí, pero he ido tratando de... Me siento un poco más relajado, gracias a Dios por eso.
It's been a long time. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but the few days that I've been here, yes, I've been happy. I feel very relaxed now.
I was all happy to be in San Francisco, and that is apparent, because when he was asked on what he wished he had done differently in Boston, quote, nothing. I put up good numbers there, and I always gave 100%.
Suck on that.
What? I give him credit for being such openly such a DB. You have to be so committed to being this level of turd and prick. And that's what Rafael Devers has been. I say good riddance. I do. But the organization, you got problems. Big time problems.
I'm hoping that you do better than 9 for 89 in this past Mariner series. You need to find a way to hit, and it's not going to be easy without Rafael Devers here. Fortunately, it looks like Bregman's going to be back sooner than later. He is going to be the key to however far you go this year, and truthfully, the next couple years.
And then the pitching's going to suffer because they need him more as a pitching coach.
That would be the greatest thing, that they just completely go in the tank again.
Milliken, Stu, I'm looking forward to this all summer long.
Of course.
Should be a good time. Joe Murray comes your way next. Have a great night, everybody. He's Tyler Milliken, James Stewart McCarthy. The Baseball Hour Roundtable. Maz, I think, is back on Monday, the summer of Maz. We'll talk to you then. See ya.
This is the Baseball Hour on the Sports Hub.
Hey, it's Maz letting you know that Road 9...